13 American parents accused of bribery came forward to face justice on Monday, pleading guilty in one of the greatest college admissions scandals in U.S. history. Some parents may face prison time as well. Overall, up to 50 people, including famous actors and CEOs, were charged by federal prosecutors for participating in the bribery scheme. Those indicted in the investigation allegedly paid bribes that ranged from $15,000 to $6.5 million US, or to cheat on the entrance exams, or to doctor their applications in order to get their children admitted to elite colleges like Yale, Stanford, Georgetown and the University of Southern California. Beyond the outrage aimed at specific parents and schools involved, the scandal has sparked a conversation over the role that money and privilege can play in the U.S. education system. So how skewed is the American college admissions process to assist the wealthy? Is it a case of a few bad apples or more widespread than that? And how much does this scandal undermine confidence in the essential fairness of higher education? Joining me in the Beijing studio is David Moser, Associate Dean at Yenching Academy of Peking University, and from our New York studio, Martin Schwimmer, a partner of Leason Ellis, a New York law firm. Gentlemen, welcome to The Point. Now, first let's take a look at this scam. Many of the accused parents are celebrities or CEOs of major companies. Basically, they found a loophole to help their children cheat on standardized tests and bribing coaches to accept fabricated athletic credentials to better gain acceptance at elite schools. But David, how did it work? How does it work, actually? Didn't these colleges involved have some kind of system to prevent such abuse?
Well, in the past, of course, the system was somewhat self-perpetuating and self-monitoring. Certainly these standard tests, such as the ACT, the SAT, it's in their best interest, in fact, to maintain the fairness and the inviolability of the test. Mm-hmm. In this case, it seems like that maybe the timing was right. You had parents who had money, you had people inside of the system who were corruptible, and I think that probably some old standards broke down, and the universities themselves were now finding out more and more, actually already had some problems within the system that just weren't as well known and that were brought out by this particular scandal.
So, Mr. Schwimmer, how might this scandal affect students who possibly have lost their spots at top colleges due to the alleged bribery?
Well, there have already been lawsuits filed in which students are alleging that they've been damaged by this. It will be very, very difficult in an environment where these colleges accept maybe 7%, 8% of those who apply under any circumstances to prove that they were the 3 or 4 people who were deprived admission. So maybe they'll get their admissions feedback, but not much more than that.
We're talking about celebrities and CEOs here who can literally buy their children better education. It is said that the admission scandal has left some students and parents wondering whether trying to get into college through hard work is still worth the effort, or if the system is rigged against them. David, are we talking here about just the very top Ivy League and other elite colleges? Are these just a few bad apple incidents, or do similar acts of bribery and fraud stretch all the way through the American college system?
Well, certainly it's much worse at the Ivy League and at colleges like Harvard. And of course, there's always been a sort of a prejudice or sort of an unfair, biased acceptance of people who are in the what we call the old boys network, the sons and daughters of people who contribute to the colleges, the people who come through the system have privileged backgrounds, and that's nothing new. Actually, that's been higher education for as long as I can remember. What's new is this absolutely flagrant fraud and bribery, which, as far as I know, is on a scale that we've never seen, or at least I've never encountered in the past decades. So I think that even if this scandal is resolved and it never happens again, higher education in America is indelibly imbued with this sort of unfairness and class bias.
Well, in Chinese we say the flies never fly near to an egg which doesn't have cracks, meaning if the system is not corruptible, then, you know, nobody can really crack it. What does that say then, that the revelation of this case showing that there are, to this degree, corrupted against the fairness of higher education?
Me, yes.
Yes.
So I think this calls it's not just a problem, it's a systemic problem. It's also a social problem. I think it's we have several generations now of what we call in America the helicopter parents. Who sort of hover around their children. They're called helicopter parents because they sort of protect them and hover around them. Now we've got this new group, I guess they call them the bulldozer parents, who actually try to clear the path in front of their students of any obstacles so that their path in life is completely smooth. And I think we're talking about not just the upper class, but the upper 1%. These people are in precisely this class who have always been very privileged. You know, we're talking about the people who surround our current president, for example, and we'll probably get into that. But you know, this is a situation that involves a change in the role of parenting, sociological changes in the expectations of students, and also a system in which is becoming increasingly, higher education increasingly commodified, commercialized, and increasingly the sole key to a future career.
All right. On social media, many people have not only expressed outrage over the scam, but have also noted that for the mega rich, it's easy to legally donate money to a school in order to receive admissions. Mr. Schwimmer, is it really that easy? And if so, why do people still pay mega thousands of dollars to these scam companies when they could just as easily have made donations quite legally?
So you're raising a really important point, which is about how Americans perceive the fairness of the college admission process. My youngest son is a junior in high school, and I'm going through this right now. We paid our $65 for him to take the SAT 2 months ago, and we believed, among other things, that the SAT would grade him fairly and report his scores competently. And we sort of accept this backdrop of people donating millions of dollars to colleges. And we accept another thing, which is that we accept that athletes might get into a college who are otherwise not qualified, and we sort of accept that. You mentioned that this is the largest admission scandal, but that's not really correct, because every year there is a recruiting scandal where it's alleged that athletes get into the top-tier athletic schools and then are not given rigorous classes or what have you. So we accept, so with regards to cracks in the egg, we do accept this form of, you could call it corruption. I guess the important aspect that makes this a real news story is that here the parents were doing the bribing. In the athletic scandals, the parents of the athletes are being bribed. With regards to donations, this is an important point. Someone donates $1 million to a college, the college gets the $1 million and they put up a library or they give scholarships. As things go, it's not that horrible. Here, the bribes are going to people who are then going to spend it on themselves. This is a bribe in the sense of someone doing something that they were not allowed to or were not supposed to, in acceptance of a bribe. You give $1 million to a college and they put up a library, that is legally or technically not a bribe.
Technically not a bribe, and still, yeah, you have to accept it, right? This is kind of the way life is. The rich people, they have more privilege. If they donate to the school, probably it's expectable that their offspring, their children might get better chances at admission. And yet, if that is the case,
if I may, I'd like to go a step further.
Yeah, please.
In that, you know, at Harvard right now, people who make if the families make under $65,000, it's my understanding that they essentially do not pay any tuition whatsoever. And the idea that people whose families don't have that wealthy background are able to go to Harvard for free, I would submit, is essentially a good thing. And it's a certain societal trade-off that someone is going to donate the money that pays for those scholarships.
So,
should this be done in a fair and transparent way?
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. So how should we look at this? This is not black and white, but is it fair or not fair? David, we have this very controversial thing, right? You can donate money and get better chances, and yet if you don't donate money, maybe a lot of students would not have the kind of facility that they are enjoying. So fair or unfair?
Well, how many things are fair in this life? People who have access to money. I mean, I just was reading, I think the Harvard endowment is getting up to close to $40 billion. That's a lot of money that Harvard is sitting on, and it makes you
So
wonder.
they don't need donations.
Yeah, I mean, where does this money come from? And you know, what is the effect? And also, I mean, you need to pay for upkeep for the buildings and build new buildings. But I mean, how many buildings can you build? And right, the point of all of this is that yes, I think it's great. You know, Harvard has enough that they ought to be able to spend money on underprivileged students. In fact, you know, as we have politicians like Bernie Sanders who make a good case that, you know, college education ought to be free in the United States with all the money that's being spent on it. But
it's going the opposite direction.
Yeah. So the problem is that, as I said, you're still going to, no matter what the system, how it changes or how we reform it, it's always going to privilege the rich and the people who are in the upper 1%, because they just simply they start at the starting point with a silver spoon in their mouth, and that continues through their entire career.
Yeah. Well, David, I'm going to ask you this impossible question. You know the Chinese system fairly well, the Gaokao, where everybody is kind of tested according to the same standard. How is it fairer? Is it less fair? Where are things going?
The Gaokao is indeed kind of a model. It's really patterned after the old imperial exam. It's very tightly vetted. They try to prevent cheating, and of course the Gaokao is, although it's a horror for the students to go through 3 years of life studying for that test, it is in a sense very fair. Where China, I think, is a little bit different is a lot of the corruption and a lot of the money exchange goes at the level of the junior highs and the high schools.
Okay.
And there are, you know, elite high schools in Beijing that parents spend lots of money to get their kids into.
Nobody wants to lose at the starting line, as they say.
Right.
Many thanks to David Moser and Martin Schwimmer. We have to leave it there. That's it for this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin, as always. You can follow me on Facebook and Twitter using the handle The Point with LX. Download the application called CGTN to watch the show on your mobile devices, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. Thanks for watching. You've got The Point.